Bowman, Vermont Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman, Vermont Rep. Emilie Krasnow, and Reverend Lennox Yearwood Jr. of the Hip Hop Caucus. If you're watching on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, please like and share to help get this live stream out to as many people as possible. I hope to be seeing some of your names in the chat so we can give you a shout out, but it doesn't look like it's rolling quite yet. A big thank you to all of our grassroots supporters out there who make everything we do here at Our Revolution possible, from electing and re-electing progressives to taking on big oil for the sake of the planet. So if you're not already a recurring monthly member of Our Revolution, we can't stress how important it is, how valuable it is to the work that we do. So we're going to be dropping a link in the chat right now so you can help power this movement. Once again, if you're just tuning in, my name is Amanda Nichols, and I'm the Communications Director here at Our Revolution. We're about to start our Fight for the Future Town Hall, so keep boosting the chat, keep telling us your name, where you're from, and why you chose to spend your Monday evening with us here tonight. We're going to have Jamaal Bowman here with us. He'll be talking about the push inside Congress to tackle the existential threat of climate change, as well as his run for re-election. MAGA donors, corporate donors, they are pouring millions of dollars into this Democratic primary in New York's 16th district. But our grassroots movement is mobilizing to out-organize the big money and really give a push behind the GOTV, talk to voters directly. If you're in New York or anywhere in the country, you can help us by knocking doors, making phone calls. You can sign up at the link in the chat. We're going to be dropping that right now. And, we're also excited to hear from two more Our Revolution endorsed candidates tonight. Vermont State Rep. Emilie Krasnow. She recently helped pass an historic climate law in Vermont, forcing fossil fuel companies to pay up for their own catastrophes. And Vermont Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman is with us as well. He's worked with Bernie for years up in Vermont. He's a farmer. He's an environmental advocate. And he's one of our favorite people to have on the show. So in just a few minutes, we're going to be kicking things off with Rev Yearwood of the Hip Hop Caucus. That is super exciting. He's going to break down the climate movement's new plan to take on big oil and finally put an end to their taxpayer handouts through the form of subsidies. Let me read a few names now that I see it rolling. Lots of people rolling in. We've got Amanda Walker in Palm Springs. We've got Eileen Halliday. She says she just landed in Dallas, Texas, oil country. Maria from San Francisco. We've got David LeGrand in Mockaloom Hill, California. And Tom Fleming is in our Zoom from Brooklyn. Robin Sunbeam. And she says she has donated to Jamaal Bowman. That's awesome to hear that we've got some supporters in the chat. We've got Rachel Barish from Oakland, California. She says she doesn't think there's anything more exciting, anything more important than dealing with climate change. So love to have, people who are on board with these issues, jumping in the chat and encouraging other people to get involved. We've got Doreen Tiganelli. She's from the Hudson Valley. She says it's a scary time for democracy. It certainly is. We need to make our voices heard electorally and on these issues. So thank you all for being here with us tonight. I'll read a few more names as we let the call get started. Dan Gogan is here saying hello to a lot of mutual friends. He says hello to me, as well as Robin and Julia. There's a lot of camaraderie going on here in the chat. Repeat attendees to our town halls, and it's really great to see a lot of these familiar names. So Jessica Tunis, she says hello from Santa Rosa, California. Linda Gravel, she's tuning in from Vermont. We've got two Vermont lawmakers here tonight. One is a lieutenant governor, and they're going to tell us all about, their plans for working for the environment, working for the climate, doing it in a way that's equitable for environmental justice as well. Jacob Ocasio, he's here from New York City. We've got Dwayne Wyatt Bays coming in from McGill, Nevada. And with that, it's like 8:31 p.m. on the dot. I'm going to hand it over to our host for the evening, Joseph Gevargis, Our Revolution's executive director. So, Joseph, over to you. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Amanda Nichols. Brothers and sisters, my name is Joseph Kivargis. I'm the executive director of Our Revolution. I want to welcome all of you to our Fight for the Future town hall. Like Amanda said, we're going to be joined tonight by our powerhouse allies in the fight for climate justice. We've got folks like the Reverend Lennox Yearwood Jr., he's the founder of the Hip Hop Caucus. We've got U.S. Representative Jamaal Bowman from New York. And from the great state of Vermont, we've got State Representative Emilie Krasnow and the Lieutenant Governor, David Zuckerman. We're going to be hearing from all of them in a moment. It's important to remember that we play an inside outside game here at Our Revolution. We elect progressives to do the organizing on the inside, to pass transformative policies like the Green New Deal or state laws like Make Big Oil Pay that just passed in Vermont. But at the same time, their success depends on us, we the people organizing on the outside. And here at Our Revolution, we have a unique partnership between elected officials and the movement. Our work goes hand in hand. And our work, I would argue, is more important now than ever. Every year, we see the climate disaster unfolding. We see the destruction of our biosphere manifest through extreme flooding, through heat waves, through killer tornadoes, and other disasters. And our movement has been organizing to try to address these causes, the causes of climate change. In 2022, we were successful in getting the Inflation Reduction Act over the finish line. It didn't have everything we wanted from Build Back Better, but we had to deal with people like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. But we got billions of dollars of investment in clean energy. It was a good start, but brothers and sisters, we all know that it's not enough to save our common home. Right now, big oil continues to rake in record profits by polluting our planet. Donald Trump recently made a pitch to big oil executives. He said, in exchange for $1 billion in campaign contributions, I'm going to do everything you want. I'm going to roll back environmental regulations. I'm going to keep the fossil fuel subsidies rolling. I'm going to facilitate your business model of death and destruction. $1 billion. Brothers and sisters, this quid pro quo is exactly what we are called to fight against in this moment. I've heard a lot of people say this is an existential election. It's existential on many levels. It's existential for our democracy, but it's existential for the survival of humanity itself. And both issues have to be at the forefront. We want to save our democracy so we can save our planet. Bernie and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar recently introduced the End Polluter Welfare Act. This would roll back billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies that we, the people, give to big oil every year. And this rollback would be a huge setback for big oil. Why? Because it would go to the heart of their business model. Their business model doesn't just depend on selling a product on the open market. It actually depends on taxpayers giving billions of dollars every year in welfare to make rich people even richer. Enough is enough. I was recently in Vermont as part of the Sanders Institute gathering, and I was with Bernie, I was with Jane Sanders, some of the top progressive minds in our country. And I had the opportunity to lead a discussion on taking out big oil by taking on fossil fuel subsidies. We drilled down on the End Polluter Welfare Act and the principle that undergirds it. Our taxpayer dollars, the money that we pay every year, should not go to companies that are hell bent on destroying our common home. And that is a very important conversation that we want to drill down on tonight. One of the people who was on the panel with me was the Reverend Lennox Yearwood Jr. Rev Yearwood is a legendary organizer. He is a minister. He's been active on the front lines of the climate fight. He's an Air Force veteran. And most of all, he's a prophetic voice for justice in our movement. He's been at the forefront of the fight to divest money, Wall Street money, from the fossil fuel industry. And he's been making sure that frontline communities, many of these communities are Black and brown communities, and they're impoverished. He's been on the front lines of making sure that the voices of these communities are taken into account as we address the climate crisis. Right now, Reverend Yearwood is serves as the president founder of the Hip Hop Caucus. He is also a philanthropist who is helping fund amazing work all around the United States. So, Reverend Yearwood, welcome to our Organized to Win Town Hall.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here with all of you. Thank you, Joseph. We were just in Vermont. I think it was so good to be in Vermont for many, many reasons. Always good to be around the senior senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. Obviously good to be around Vermont Representative Krasnow and our dear brother, Vermont's Lieutenant Governor, my brother Zuckerman. And so it's just good to be around, and hopefully later on we'll have Congressman Jamaal Bowman. So you got an all-star lineup here. But Vermont was special because they just passed legislation to hold big oil accountable. And that's what's important. Big oil, whose business plan is a death sentence for our communities, has been polluting and causing many, many problems for us throughout our nation. And so I'm so glad that Vermont is now taking the lead. And hopefully, I haven't seen the last, but hopefully New York is, I know they passed and they're waiting for their governor. So hopefully other states are taking heed and following in the great footsteps of Vermont. Let me say this. We had someone in our movement. I just want to lead by saying that we had Reverend James Lawson Jr., who passed on the 9th, just a couple of days ago. And he was a beacon. And the reason why he's important, he was 95 when he passed, but he was one of the soldiers of the civil rights movement. And he was right there with Dr. King and many, many others. And why it's important is that generation from the 20th century, a lot of them have gone on to cross over to as we would say, down south. I'm from Louisiana. They say they've gone over to cross on to the other side of Jordan. And I bring him up because I have some comments around what we need to do in the climate movement, which I've been a part of now for almost 30 years. But I bring him up because there's 6 things that he mentioned that I kind of want to just highlight that was so important. One, he said that one of the key things that we must do, this is Reverend James Lawson, he said one of the things we must do is that we must have deep preparation. And I believe that. I think it's the move what we're doing on these calls. Thank goodness for the Our Revolution, and for the whole cadre of activists around the nation. But these calls are critical because we just can't have conversations about the climate crisis that just get us, um, up in arms, but we don't do anything. So we must have deep preparation, understand what we're engaging. Two, he mentioned we must have the importance of strategy. This is chess, not checkers. And so we must really be mindful of our strategy, that we're just not recklessly talking about deconstructing, but what are we also reconstructing in that process? He talked about the importance of knowing our history. Um, that's critical because a lot of us don't understand, particularly here, that we have a lot of things that have been done before that we must learn and advocate for and move forward on. Um, Fourth, who was at the table? This is actually very important for the climate movement. And he mentioned that because I actually believe that the way that we went on climate is by having a woman, Black woman, BIPOC, um, young people, queer-led movement. I actually believe that's how we win. I think that there's a lot, and don't have time to go into it now, but I'm sure you can just go online and find one of my speeches on it. But I think that we have a movement, unfortunately, that is very siloed. It's predominantly white. It's unfortunately on the East Coast and the West Coast, and we're shrinking. And I think it's a big thing as we deal with fighting the fossil fuel industry. Um, I think the fifth thing he said, know your message. And the last thing he mentioned was local over national. And that's why I'm so glad to be having this conversation in Vermont and with you and those who are here, because I do think, regardless of whatever happens on the federal level, local over national is a very important strategy. But let me just say this. My part is kind of open up to give you a kind of feel and get you into this conversation. I want to talk about the reason why taxation and some subjects are important, but I want to set the frame for you. I'm from Louisiana. I'm literally from a place that's called Cancer Valley, and it's a place where my community is dying, like literally dying. Like I get phone calls every single day from people who have said this person or that person has died. And when you have an industry that is hell bent on killing people, particularly Black and brown and indigenous people, and they're also now putting their own future generations at risk, you have an industry that is suicidal. And so we must understand that not just them wanting to give um, a former president $1 billion or him asking for it, or the fact that they want to do everything to make sure we don't have clean water, but they're literally putting us on the brink of extinction. When you have places like New Delhi and India that has temperatures of 128 degrees, you have small children who are literally trying to avoid the heat. And in trying to avoid the heat, you have 3 and 4 year olds and young people who are drowning themselves because they're trying to avoid the heat. You have floods in Germany, and I mean, I can go on and on and on. So right now we're at the brink. They said that the water temperature in the Gulf is now nearing 100 degrees in some places. I can go on and on and on about how we are on the brink. And it is clear that this industry is hell bent and burning everything beneath the ground. So the only thing that I believe that's going to stop them is by stopping the money pipeline. The only thing that I believe that is going to stop them is in the legislation that was just put forth to make polluters pay. The only thing that I actually believe that has ever stopped any entity that is hell bent on harming humanity is when you have to cut off their finances for harming other human beings. And so we're at a point now where we must now hold the banks accountable who are funding this madness. We must hold the insurance companies accountable, and we must hold ourselves accountable because a large part of the money that goes to them comes from us through our taxes. And so one of the things that we must do is that we must stop letting our government use our tax dollars. We should be going to building schools and daycares and mental health facilities and many other things besides going into the pockets of a bunch of oligarchs who are sitting on the Gulf Coast or the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean who are just killing our communities. So we must do everything. And we have an opportunity right now because the tax breaks that have been put forth for the fossil fuel industry are will expire in 2025. And so we must do everything we can at this moment to educate, mobilize, energize our communities so they understand that they are paying for our own destruction and demise. And Raymond, this is not a partisan issue because I don't know anybody who wants to pay somebody to pollute their child. Republican, Democrat, Independent, I don't care who you are. If you are in the business of paying somebody to harm your child, giving them asthma and emphysema, or your mom and dad getting them cancer, then you are really off the spectrum. But if you are in a position to be just an American who is in trying to ensure that we can have a long life, that nobody should be coughing up blood, that nobody should be peeing blood, that nobody should feel their breasts and feel lumps on it just because someone does not want to transition from fossil fuels to clean energy. And because of that, we must stop using our tax dollars to fund the madness of our extinction. That must stop now. I don't care who's in office. They have to understand that as human beings, we will not fund our destruction anymore. And so I'm so glad that our revolution had me on this call to be with you. And I hope that you understand that we are at a critical moment in history. And thank you, Brother Joseph, for having me. And man, all power to the people.
Amen, Reverend Yearwood. Thank you for joining us. One follow-up question. So we have, and you laid out Reverend Lawson's strategies, 6 points. I think we have a lot of them lined up, including a moment
Right.
in 2025 when Trump's tax cuts are set to expire. And the Republicans are already talking about taking those tax cuts for the rich even further, right? That's what Donald Trump wants to do. I feel like the corporate class are going to organize to make sure that those tax cuts don't expire, but even give more of our money to the rich.
That's right.
How do we overcome this entrenched power? How do we harness the energy and the spirit of our forefathers and foremothers to take on the Goliath that is not just big oil, but big corporations who are
That's right.
feeding at the trough?
So the first thing in that is that we cannot win as a siloed, segregated progressive movement. That doesn't work. So the first thing we must realize that we must be intersectional environmentalists. We must understand that climate justice is racial justice, and racial justice is climate justice. Queer justice is climate justice. Women's justice is climate justice. We have to understand that those things intersect. That's the first thing. And the second thing to that, to your point, is that we must broaden the movement. We are not strong enough as we are right now. And so we must do things to broaden the movement. Let me share this story in regards to East Palestine, Ohio. Many of us saw that last year, in which in East Palestine, Ohio, in February, there was a train that was derailed from Norfolk Southern, and it was carrying vinyl chloride, which is one of the most deadliest toxins that comes from petrochemicals. It was being brought up from Port Arthur, Texas. It was being brought all the way throughout the country. Literally, it started from the frack gas, which is such a sinister way. Frack gas from Ohio, West Virginia, that then went down to be put in vinyl chloride in Houston and Port Arthur, then brought back up into the country. Something that we don't even need anymore. We don't even need it. And so, but in that, the train derailed. Norfolk Southern derailed, and then it imploded. I bring that up because one of the things why our revolution and what you're doing and what we need to hold everybody accountable, is that one of the things there is that when that train derailed, in a predominantly Republican community, predominantly white community, In that process, um, uh, the month later, that is actually where Donald Trump actually launched his presidential campaign. He actually has now the distinction of not just being somebody who ran for office with a felon. He also had the distinction of someone who actually launched their campaign from an environmental justice site. And even though he thought MAGA hats was pretty ridiculous, similar to what he did in Puerto Rico with Hurricane Maria, throwing out paper towels, it was still just a symbolism that he was trying to just put forth this message that this current administration does not care about middle class white people, which is not shouldn't be true. But the other standpoint of that is that because our movement has such a way of they've put ourselves in silos. So they think when you hear environmental justice, that means Black, brown, and indigenous. So that means people in East Palestine, Ohio, didn't even know they were, and they didn't even know they were an environmental justice community. And so the President Biden didn't show up to East Palestine, Ohio, until a month after the 1 year anniversary. And so it kind of reinforced this mentality. So I think the first thing to defeat the fossil fuel industry is actually just us coming together. Like again, it's just us saying that one, the fossil fuel industry is ultra harmless, which ironic is Norfolk Southern, which is based in Atlanta, which was hauling this stuff, actually has no problems funding Cop City in Atlanta. So they have no problem, ensuring that their evil is connected. But in the meantime, us being progressive is siloed. So the first thing, we must break down those barriers. That's the first thing. The second thing I think is important is that our message, it can't just be simply about just the climate crisis. But again, we must go why this issue of taxation is so important, because we must go to many communities and begin to embrace them and say, listen, what we do know from polling is that in all communities, most people, without a doubt, they want clean water, and they hate plastic. Now, for some reason, we all don't agree on clean air. I'm not sure why we don't agree on clean air, but that's another issue. I'm not sure about that one. But we all agree that we want clean water and that we hate plastic. So I do think in those things that we need to understand that plastics are fossil fuels, and we must connect the dots, that we have plastic now that are now we see in the testicles, we have plastic in the placenta, we have microfibers that are now being transmitted throughout. There's an amazing article, if you haven't seen it, in the Washington Post that came out today. But I do think that we must connect the dots, Joseph. And I think we do that, then it cuts out the legs from the phosphate industry. It takes away their social license. And more importantly, it takes away their funding. And so we can do that, cut away their social license, take away their funding, and unite ourselves as human beings, then I don't think that this industry can stand.
Amen. Reverend Yearwood, thank you again for joining us and laying
Thanks for
out
having me.
the vision of the fight ahead, which is the fight for our future. It's the fight for our common home. It's the fight for our planet. We've got a moment next year, brothers and sisters, to go after big oil's bottom line. And as we get ready, we've got to do like Rev said. We got to break down our silos. We got to think about how our issues are intersectional and how our movement, whether we want to win on healthcare or any other issue, is dependent on us working together to preserve our common home. And we have a window of opportunity next year to put big oil on its heels. And so, Rev, thank you very much for laying that
as
out.
I close out, let me just say one thing.
Yeah.
Me and Bill McKibben helped start a group called Third Act. It's for old people like us. And so I just want to say also that for my old people who hang out with us, you're needed too in this movement. I know a lot of energy goes throughout the movement, but just know that we need everybody in this movement, even though old geezers like me and Bill McKibben. So thank y'all so much, and have a beautiful evening.
Thank you, Rev. So next up, want to really touch on what Rev talked about. The local is part of where movements start, right? It's not just we elect national leaders, a president, and things happen, but we really want to focus in on creating change, transformative change at the local level. So next up, I want to introduce Vermont State Representative Emilie Krasnow. Our Revolution is proud to re-endorse her for her re-election bid to the Vermont House. Emilie's been a powerful champion on the issues we care about, whether it's housing, expansion of healthcare, labor. She serves as the co-chair of the Vermont House Labor Caucus, but she was also recently instrumental in helping pass a bill in Vermont, a first in the nation bill that makes big oil pay for the mess they create. I want to say that again. It's like this is not like rocket science. This is a bill to make big oil pay for the pollution that they cause. This is groundbreaking. Doesn't exist anywhere else in any other state. And I want to bring up Emilie to tell us a little bit about the effort to pass that legislation to take on big oil and stick it to them. Emilie, welcome to our call.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and good evening to everyone joining us. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I want to start with a story. It's a David versus Goliath one. Last July 10th, it started to rain in Vermont. It wasn't a hurricane or a tropical storm. It was just the sort of heavy rain that climate scientists have told us to expect because warm air holds more water vapor than cold air. And in Vermont, our winters are getting warmer and summers are getting hotter. However, the rain didn't stop for about 24 hours. By the next day, nearly 4,000 homes and 800 businesses were damaged. 18,000 acres of farmland were flooded, causing 38% crop loss for wholesale and retail markets. Total damages in a state of just 650,000 was over $1 billion, and 3 people lost their lives. But as bad as that was, this wasn't a one-off event for Vermont. Our little state has experienced 22 federally declared climate disasters since 2011. Every county has been hit multiple times with floods, freak frosts, high wind events, and massive storms. We tied for 7th most disasters in the country between 2011 and 2021. And our per capita spending on climate disasters was 5th in the nation. Vermont is one of the greenest states in the country, but we're not wealthy, and there is no way we can keep up with all the costs climate change is throwing our way. Those heavy burdens to our physical, mental, and financial well-being now rest entirely on the shoulders of federal, state, and local taxpayers, small businesses, farmers, and disproportionately on those historically disadvantaged and marginalized populations who can least afford it and are often most in harm's way. The major fossil fuel companies must pay their fair share. In Vermont, if Vermont is David in the story, Goliath is the fossil fuel industry. These behemoths have known for decades that their products would cause climate chaos, and yet, when given the opportunity to act responsibly, they instead lied about what they knew and funded a decades-long disinformation campaign designed to confuse the press, the public, and policymakers about their role in climate change, all while ratcheting up the price consumers pay for their products. And they've just become filthy rich doing it. The profits of just 4 companies, ExxonMobil, Shell, Total, and Chevron, average more than $110 billion a year for the last 3 years. And they are not paying a penny to help Vermonters recover from last summer's floods. They are privatizing their profits while socializing all of the downstream costs of their products. This fundamental unfairness is why I'm here to discuss Vermont's new climate law, the Climate Superfund Act, which requires oil and gas companies to pay for the climate damage they've caused rather than leaving taxpayers to bear the cost. This measure passed with tripartisan support and allowed to become law by a Republican governor is a historic achievement. Despite its small size, Vermont has taken a bold step that we hope will inspire other states and Congress to take similar actions. A federal version of this bill has been introduced by Senators Chris Van Hollen and Bernie Sanders. Additionally, states like Maryland, Massachusetts, California, and New York are considering similar measures. And I'm so excited to report that over the weekend, the New York General Assembly sent a similar bill to Governor Hochul's desk for her signature. Climate change is the greatest threat to our planet. The fossil fuel industry's activities have led to global warming with severe consequences, especially for states like Vermont. We lack a comprehensive strategy for adaptation and resilience, and the financial burden is overwhelming. The Climate Superfund Act aims to address these challenges by making fossil fuels companies pay for the damage they've caused. This law is based on polluters pay principle. Similar to hazardous waste cleanup laws, it holds these companies accountable for their substantial greenhouse gas emissions from 1995 through 2024, which are well documented. Under the new law, the state treasurer will calculate total damages that the fossil fuel emissions during the covered period have cost Vermont. Then, our Agency of Natural Resources will send prorated cost recovery demands based on each company's emissions to each company that is responsible for more than 1 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions during the covered period. While that may sound complex, it really is just a legally defensible articulation of the polluters pay principle, that value that most of us learned in kindergarten, and that is that if you make a mess, you should help clean it up. Before I end, I want to express my gratitude to State Senator Dick Sears, the prime sponsor of this bill, who passed away last week. He was a dedicated advocate for holding polluters accountable, and it is unlikely that Vermont would have passed this new law without his leadership. In this David versus Goliath story, Dick Sears is the one who saw a way for David to win. In closing, working Vermonters and small businesses are not to blame for climate change. It is only fair that the fossil fuel companies, which have known about and profited from their impact on climate, pay their share of the cleanup costs. Thank you.
Emilie, thank you so much for joining us this evening. So you said this bill passed with tripartisan support. So before we even get to the tri part, tell me about the bi part. How did you get Republicans, right? How did you get Republicans who are usually aligned with big oil and corporate interests? How did you organize to get them on board to pass this bill?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so in Vermont, we do have three parties. And so we have Democrat, Republican, Progressive, and of course, independents. And so a lot of folks in the past have Republicans have sometimes been hesitant to sponsor different climate legislation, but this one was different to many of the folks, and both in the Senate and House. They just felt that this made sense, and for the taxpayers to not have to pay for the burden that was caused. It really, our Climate Solutions Caucus that has both members of the House and Senate leaders on climate legislation, we all work together to really, along with advocates, to get folks on board to understand that Vermont's history with PFOAs and other chemicals, that we've gone through so much, and that this could be a way forward to help working Vermonters and our state recover from the dramatic flooding and climate crisis that we're experiencing.
And Emilie, did the crisis itself, like the flooding, like the dramatic things that are starting to happen, wake folks up?
Absolutely. As I've been out talking to neighbors and folks across the state, it was a real wake-up call. And again, this wasn't our first major flooding experience, but I think that folks really understood, it's here now. We're facing it today. And it's dramatic and devastating. And we have to do everything we can to make sure that we remain resilient during these horrible natural disasters. So I really think it did push folks to see their neighbors have their homes washed away and lose all their belongings. And some folks still haven't been able to move back into their homes. I think it really woke folks up to the realities that it's here now.
So, Emilie Krasnow, thank you so much for joining us tonight on our Organized to Win call. We're proud to re-endorse you. It is people like Emilie all around the country that we are partnering with to do transformative things for people and the planet. And this is just one example of how our movement collectively is making change, not just in Washington D.C., but in small towns and states all around the United States. Again, Emilie, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Next up, I want to bring an old friend, Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman. We have had David on our calls in the past. He's been endorsed and re-endorsed by our revolution as he's run for office. And David is a longtime friend of Bernie and Jane. I was at the Sanders Institute gathering last weekend, as I mentioned, and Jane was talking about David as a college intern volunteering on some of Bernie's early runs. David, it's good to have you on our call today, and want to talk to you a little bit about climate change as well as your race for lieutenant governor. But first, let's start with how climate change has impacted you as a farmer. You're, not one of the big corporate executives that's running for office. You're an everyday farmer. And how has climate change impacted you and others like you? And what have you been doing about the issue?
Well, thank you, Joseph, and everybody at Our Revolution, so much for the opportunity. And of course, thank you for your support in the past and again here. And of course, it's great to hear Reverend Yearwood, and I look forward to hearing from Jamaal Bowman. I do want to say a shout out to Emilie. Emilie had been a volunteer and an intern and part of my campaigns for over a decade. I've known her for a long time. And I really want to highlight that she got her experience doing that for me and other candidates, just like so many of you on this call who are making those phone calls. You're learning the issues. You're recognizing as you talk to different people how what you say can be heard better by other people as you get better at saying it. And Emilie was just fantastic. So I just want to say, many of you on this call, you never know, you might be in Emilie's shoes or mine in the future. And I want to inspire you, hopefully, to consider that possibility, because we're not going to build a change in electoral office until more amazing people run. And of course, it's uphill. We know that. Corporate money, oil money, pharmaceutical money is usually against us. Now we've got APAC money, against folks like Jamaal Bowman, who's going to be speaking next. And it is really hard, but it's really, really critical. And, I feel lucky to be a farmer. It gives me some patience being out there in the field. Sometimes after a hard political day, if I go out and work on the tractor for a few years or weed carrots or whatever I do, I can see at the end of the day a few hours of work with my hands that actually produce a result that day in that moment. And sometimes politics is a grind for a while to make something happen. I mean, if anybody's a champion of that, look at Bernie. I mean, the guy's been running for office since the early 70s, and he's now, one of the most amazing, if not the most amazing U.S. senator, certainly contemporarily and maybe in history. And but I got to tell you, farming is getting harder. We grow about 10 acres of vegetables. We have some chickens. We have some pigs. And last year was unbelievable. It was incredibly dry in May. Sadly, I did too many rain dances. It started raining in June and just never stopped. And then we had that 24 hours of heavy rain that Emilie talked about. The ground was saturated. Vermont had huge flooding. A lot of farms were flooded out. Mine wasn't flooded out, but I got to tell you, first of all, in May around the 18th, it got down to 20 degrees. And normally we get a light frost in early May, and that's about it. I had to put down 3 layers of row cover, run irrigation from 2 in the morning till 9 in the morning, even 10 o'clock, just to keep the crops that I planted from freezing, when normally They would never have been exposed to that kind of temperature remotely close to that time of year. This year, it barely dropped below 45 degrees since late April. In fact, many evenings were close to 60. The crops that we plant aren't used to these kinds of temperature variations. And then, like I said, in July, it just rained and rained and rained. And ultimately, while I didn't flood, we had the worst season ever. Crops got diseases like crazy. They just didn't yield. I normally produce tons and tons of melons. People love them at the farmer's market. I had a fraction, maybe 10% of my normal yield in just that one crop. And we grow about 50 different crops. So the weather fluctuations deeply impact our agriculture. We know we've been over pumping water out of the aquifers. It used to be that you could get some regular rains. Rains are more intense in certain spots. They don't exist in others. We're seeing the fires in California. It's our food, people. When we don't connect climate change to our food, we don't connect climate change to the impacts of our coastal communities and our marginalized communities that are often in more challenged areas as soon as the weather patterns get funky. Wealthy people might own 5 houses all over the world. Ultimately, I'm not even sure they're going to find a way to get away from the changes that are happening. We have to work together. I think about Vermont's laws. Not only did the big oil pay bill pass, but also we passed a renewable energy bill to get our biggest power companies to be 100% renewable by 2030, and the smaller ones 100% renewable by 2035. The governor vetoed that one. We're going to push back on him to override the veto. But in Vermont, it also made it so that not 10%, but 20% of their power has to come from within Vermont. If we all live with power production in our backyards, we're going to think more about how much power we use. But also, it means we're not exporting our power's impact on other people. Right now in Vermont, if we turn on too much power, we run gas-fired plants in Connecticut. Well, who lives next to those gas-fired plants? Marginalized, low-income, primarily minority communities. It is an impact that each one of us puts onto the communities that already have been pushed to the side, have lower wealth, and higher health impacts. Health impacts, another piece of it. What about our healthcare system? For me, all of this is the web. It's the web of life. It's the web of interconnectivity. The Reverend talked about it earlier. If we aren't talking about our brothers and sisters, regardless, LGBTQ plus, races of all kinds, if we aren't talking about everybody, then we're talking about nobody. And so here in Vermont, we're at least trying to do what we can in our own little teeny way with 640,000 people. But as Emilie talked about, folks are coming together because when you face Tropical Storm Irene and then this heavy rains and all these other catastrophes due to the climate, folks start to realize that they can't just say no all the time. And so we got Republicans on board. We can't keep pitting ourselves against each other, or particularly letting others pit ourselves against each other. And I know it's hard, but there's a lot of working class, rural white people who have become hardcore MAGA folks because corporate America turned government against them, exported their jobs overseas. There's no jobs out of high school that create a middle class life. If we can break bread with people and connect with them on the realities of the economic split that these companies have done while exploiting us and killing us with these toxic chemicals, then we are a unit together that has way more power than the corporate powers.
David, thank you again for joining us. Very quickly, tell us a little bit about what you're running on and what you want to accomplish in your next term as the Lieutenant Governor of Vermont.
Well, I appreciate that. And earlier, Emilie talked about the tripartisan situation in Vermont, and we have the most established third party, the Progressive Party here in Vermont. And I believe I'm the highest elected third party official in the country. And I've been sticking my neck out on climate issues, sustainable agriculture. Our farm is an organic farm, so it's organic regenerative agriculture, trying to sequester carbon. But there's a couple issues. This last year, I did a Banned Books or Books Worth Reading tour around the state, schools, and libraries and bookstores, talking about democracy. Without democracy, if we actually can fix democracy, campaign finance needs fixing, our voting system needs fixing, so you have more choices. But ultimately, if Trump is elected, our ability to fight for these issues is going to disappear. he's going to use a police state to squash us at every turn. So we need to think about democracy, universal health care, where Vermont has passed a law that is would make Vermont the first state to be a universal health care state. We came within days of becoming universal health care state about 10 years ago, and the governor then pulled the plug. I'm going to be doing a lot more research to see if we can move our way back towards that. And ultimately, the climate. It's without a climate, without a planet to live on, as long as we keep thinking of ourselves as apart from instead of a part of our natural world, we're in big trouble. And Vermonters recognize that. They're seeing it in their food, they're seeing it in their energy, they're seeing it in expanded ticks in Vermont because we're getting warmer, and Lyme disease, which I've also done a lot of work on in Vermont to try to make sure folks get accurate health care for Lyme disease. So it's really about reducing division, climate, universal health care, and our kids. I have an 18-year-old, and when I look at the last 5 years and think about the next 60 for her life or 70, I am really, really frightened if we don't take very, very rapid action to turn this around.
Well, Lieutenant Governor, that's why we are proud to re-endorse you for re-election. We need bold progressive champions working on the front lines at the state and local level to really create the templates for change. If we can create universal health care, if we can make big oil pay in states and localities, there's no reason we can't export that up to the federal level. So, David, again, thank you for your leadership, and we're going to be looking forward to doing the work to get you reelected in the August election.
Yeah, August primary. Thank you so much, Joseph, and our revolution. I really, really appreciate it. And to all of you out there doing the work on the ground, it's all of us together. Appreciate it.
Si se puede. So now I want to give a big welcome to one of our frequent guests, a close ally of our revolution, United States Representative Jamaal Bowman. We have endorsed Representative Bowman for reelection, and I think most of the folks on this call understand that Jamaal has a target on his back, meaning big money is coming after Jamaal because he's been a leading voice on addressing the climate. He's been a leading voice on the expansion of healthcare and educational equity and for peace in the Middle East. Jamaal's election is 2 weeks away. We're down to the wire, brothers and sisters, and we want to make sure that we get some words of inspiration from Jamaal and that each of us gets a chance to sign up to Phone Bank and to knock the doors in this home stretch. So with that, I want to bring up United States Representative Jamaal Bowman. Jamaal, welcome. Tell us a little bit about the state of the race in the home stretch.
Thank you, Brother Joseph. Really appreciate you for that warm introduction, and love the hair and love the beard and love the glasses. You got mad style, my brother. At some point, I'm going to grow some facial hair. Since this doesn't grow anymore, I got to get the facial hair going. I miss hair, man. It's like I feel very, very jealous. But thank you for that warm introduction. Appreciate you, brother. Shout out to the Our Revolution family and crew. Thank you for everything that you do. The country needs you now more than ever. The people need you now more than ever. I need you now personally more than ever. And this race needs you more than ever. We are not 2 weeks away, y'all. We are 6 days away from early voting. Early voting, actually starting tomorrow, with 5 days away. Early voting begins this Saturday, and we need your help. They are spending upwards of $20 to $30 million on this race. They dropped another million this week on their ads. They are spending astronomical numbers simply because we are fighting for peace and justice and equality and humanity, and specifically because we call for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. That's why all the money is coming in. And believe it or not, this is MAGA Republican Trump supporting money too. And the same kind of money that goes towards, ripping abortion rights from women, same kind of money that goes towards gutting voting rights, gutting affirmative action, et cetera, et cetera. That's the kind of money that's coming into this race to get the first Black man in U.S. history out of this seat. They don't want a working class person in this seat. They want someone who will bend the knee to big money in politics. And that is something we will never, ever, 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 ever do, because big money is the thing that is accelerating the destruction of our democracy. So here's the bottom line. If our supporters come out to vote, we win, and we win big. And here's why I'm saying if. You got your triple prime voters, the voters that vote in every election, general, primary, all the time. Then you have double prime. And then you have those who rarely vote because the system has failed them and they are jaded by the system and they feel a strong sense of apathy. Thank God those people love and support us. And thank God we have been engaging the non-voter or the inconsistent voter or the jaded voter for several months on the phones, at the doors, in mailers. We have not forgotten about them. And we know exactly who they are and where they are. They are people under 50. They are people of color. Those are the people we need to turn out. True progressives are going to vote. Triple prime are going to vote. We need to get out people of color and people under 50 in big numbers. In 2020, we tripled voter turnout amongst young people and people of color from 2018, and that's how we won the historic election against Congressman Elliot Engel by 16 points. We are going to do the same thing here, but only if you all support us with whatever you can do. Doors, phone, text banking, sign up, sign up, sign up. We need you. We know where we're targeting. The people are in the Bronx, Yonkers, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle. Those are the areas they are in. We turn those numbers out big, we win. But we also got to turn out Portchester. We also got to turn out Greenburgh and the river towns. We do that in big numbers. We win, and we win big. And so that's where we are. Fundraising's going well. We don't have 20, 30 million, but we don't need that. We got heart. We got soul. We got compassion. We got love. We got humanity, and we got people. And organized people beat organized money every time. We got Bernie coming to the district. We got AOC coming to the district. We got a crew coming in during early voting week next week, leading into election day. All hands on deck. I'm the most endangered member of Congress, New York Magazine has said, but I don't feel endangered because I'm surrounded by everyone on this call. Your love and your strength and your compassion and your organizing muscle is what's going to put us over the top. And then when we win on June 25th, God willing, inshallah, is going to contribute to the revolution of our democracy that we need. The multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-background revolution that America needs for the health and well-being of our democracy and to give everyone the opportunity to not just survive, but thrive. If our democracy doesn't work for everyone, it doesn't work. And that's why we're on the brink of having Donald Trump in the White House again. And so I thank you all for allowing me to say a few words. I thank you all for leaning into my race. Please sign up. We need you. We need you. Listen, I got to ask a big question. Quit your job for the next couple of weeks. Leave your kids with somebody else. We need you to dedicate every minute, every second, every hour to making sure we win, because we have to show them we can beat big money because we got the organized people, y'all. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Let's go, Representative Bowman. Thank you so much again for joining our call, taking time out of a very busy campaign schedule to fire up our members. I want to encourage everybody who's on either in the Zoom room or on the teletown hall service to sign up to Canvas. If you live in Jamaal's district, we have a super volunteer organizer who is on the ground, going to be knocking doors and organizing our revolution activists. But if you're not in the district and want to help out, we've got phone banks that are rolling. We've got a list of progressive voters, Bernie voters, Warren voters that we need to make sure get out to vote early. And if they don't vote early, they get out on election day. So we need your people power because we got to defeat the big money power that the other side has. And we know that we can do it because Jamaal Bowman is a United States representative, and we know he's going to continue to be. Again, Brother Bowman, thank you for joining us. And I want to encourage everyone to sign up, spend a little bit of time, give a little bit of time to help put Jamaal back in the United States House of Representatives. And last but not least, we had a wonderful call. I want to thank all of our members who joined us this evening to hear from our amazing lineup: Reverend Lennox Yearwood from the Hip Hop Caucus, Emilie Krasnow, State Representative for Vermont, and Vermont Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman. Thank you all. We're going to be following up with our next Revolution Report with action steps that each of you can take. In the interim, we're going to continue fighting for peace. If you have not yet gotten your Peace Not War t-shirt, you can get it. Link is in the chat. And I also want to encourage all of you to become a member. We are going up against big money. And it's not just Jamaal Bowman, but it's races across the land. And what we know is that when we organize, when we pool people power and our financial resources, we have the ability to win. And I want to encourage all of you to contribute, become a member, and help us build progressive power going into the new year. And last but not least, I want to, for those of you who are interested in rebuilding the American labor movement, we're going to have a special call that is going to be co-facilitated by our Revolution Board Chair, Larry Cohen. Larry's the former president of the Communication Workers of America. He's going to be joined by the head of the National Labor Relations Board and Cindy Estrada from the AFL-CIO. And we're going to talk about the labor law reforms that have been put in place under this administration. One of our top goals has been to let workers organize, and there's some amazing things that have happened behind the scenes to make sure that the law favors working people, not the rich and the powerful. The link is in the chat. I hope you can join us for this online conversation. And last but not least, if you are in Washington, D.C., join me, join Liz Schuler, head of the AFL-CIO, and others who are going to be hosting a fundraiser for Jonathan Tassini. Jonathan's running for the Portland, Oregon City Council. Jonathan is a longtime labor organizer and labor champion, and we want to make sure that we get him elected to Portland City Council so he can lead a labor revolution from inside the halls of power. So if you're in Washington, D.C., join us for the fundraiser this week at the Electrical Workers Union. And with that, I want to wrap up our Organize to Win call with our chant. Unmute your phones and say it with me, brothers and sisters. When we organize,
we win.
We win.
When we organize,
we win.
When we organize,
we win.
We win.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.